Today, let's go with the masterclass offered by STOCKFISH14. My proposal is the following. If you study STOCKFISH14 and learn from the best chess engine, you can really step up your game. So now I have 3 fun lessons. And lesson number 1, how to deal with the London system. You can see the position when white does d4, bishop f4, knight f3. How do you deal with that? Number 2, can you launch an early attack with the black pieces? And number 3, what are the winning tactics to really conclude the game? And I'll walk you through an example by a STOCKFISH14 game played recently. How do we read this position? Let's go back. g4, knight f6, bishop f4, that's the London system, c5 is natural, and here a6 to avoid a bishop, a knight coming to b5. So I'm gonna go through the main opening, and here black took, and this is the position where STOCKFISH14 can teach us about the next level in chess. What would you play with black? The answer, STOCKFISH14 doesn't castle and go for the attack. g5, attacking the bishop and trying to get to the king. Now bishop has to move. h5, the knight is moving. g4, yes, white is capturing a pawn, but pawns are not important here. Bishop d6, attacking the knight on h2. Knight move, the bishop moves, and here long castle. Clearly you're trying to target the king. You give up a pawn, right? Now knight g5, targeting f7. White is actually another engine, fritz 17, and rook dg8. And here I'm stopping. This is what STOCKFISH14 did, giving a pawn with g5 and h5 and opening the fires against the king. We have an early attack, and look at this king here, fairly safe. The king in g1, not so safe. So that's really a neat way to fight for an advantage early on. So remember g5 followed by h5, opening the line. That's the main concept here. Now, of course, the game continued, and let me stop here. This is move 35. You can see black is attacking, has the 2 bishops, and the rooks are attacking. And what is the finishing touch here? Black to move. The answer, d3, and that's a winning move. So let's go to see why this wins on the spot. Well, white would take to try to exchange, and now you cannot take with a pawn because you will lose the piece here because you have the pin against the king. So rook takes makes sense. Now another sack, you give the rook away. White takes, you do check, protected by the mighty bishop. King f1, check. You have the other bishop here. King g1, check again. And if the king comes here, you finish with bishop g2. So instead of coming here, white could block over here. Just simply do that. King moves. And here you have 2 bishops and 2 extra pawns. So again, a neat way to finish the game, going for d3. That's a nice tactical resource. Let's go to the next lesson. The next lesson is more on the strategic side. How do you manage close positions? How do you have a winning attack? And how do you target the opposite king? All that thanks to STOCKFISH14. So now onto the position here that I have, and once again I will walk through the opening move. So this is the English opening. Bishop goes to g7, and here I'm stopping. So the idea is like the position is fairly closed. You can see no pawn was exchanged. All the pieces are on the board. Black is gonna walk through a lot of pawn breaks, and white is also advancing here. So you have to time your breaks, and eventually with black you target the king. So this looks like the King's Indian defense, but you can apply the King's Indian defense to the English opening. And let's see, the first move is g5, right? Pushing this pawn over here to generate counterplay against the king. So the game continues. And here, what do? h5. So you're trying to open the lines, but you're gonna use all these pawns. The h pawn, the f pawn, and the d6 pawn to gain space and gain the advantage. So white is of course trying to gain advantage on the queen side, like c4, a4, b5. This is white's plan. So let's see how you deal with that. c5, d5. Now you activate the bishop so that the rooks can swing over here. The bishop is targeting d2. That's a good move. White's defends the knight, and here d4 played. So very important, before you continue on the king side, you're actually opening over here, d4. That's important because you're restricting the pieces, right, around the white's king. Bishop e6, just like in the previous game, you're not afraid to give up a pawn, right? You're going for the attack. Now the bishop retreats. What do? f4. So notice that this pawn here on d4 is preventing that bishop from attacking you. But this pawn over here can take or move to f3, and you're pressuring the king already. Queen a3 played, so white wants to push like that, and here h4. So using this pawn break, this one here, and this one to really converge toward the king. That's the lesson here. So white takes, because otherwise you would take on g3, g3. And now that you move that bishop early on, you can swing the rook here and attack on the g5, just like in the previous game, right? So here you open the file, knight g4, the knight comes here attacking f2, so white takes it, and here the game continues. So here black is very close to winning, and white tries some counterplay. So you have to be careful. You take the pawn, and now that you neutralize the queen side, you go for the kill. And in this game, the thing was pawn breaks. You get your pawns open up lines around the king. Can you move the h2 pawn? No. The d4 is blocked. This one is blocked. However, you have one more pawn break, f4, f3. And that's what STOCKFISH14 plays. Very strong, so the game continues. Now the pawn is taken, and here queen f3 and white resign. So here if the king were to move here, you do check. The king comes back, you do another check here. The knight comes here, and you just take, and he's completely winning, right? So you cannot take back the knight, so you try to move the queen to the rescue. Just do check, and queen f3. And the problem is you cannot take, let's say, the knight, because you can have queen h1, checkmate, and you win. So the last pawn break was f3. But this lesson is about all the breaks you can see here. So you have the breaks by h5, f5, and d6 going to d4. And eventually you have f4, f3. All the pawns are weapons against the white king. And that's how you win the game. In this last lesson, I will try to display tactics with STOCKFISH14. So you need to sharpen your tactics. Of course, computers are extremely good at spotting the winning combinations. So here I'm gonna give you 2 tips that you can play at advanced level, 2000, 2400, 2600 online, and you can use these. Is the opponent's queen vulnerable, or is the king safety the key feature in the position? So I'm gonna tell you that if you ask yourself these questions, you're gonna spot tactics, and if you calculate right, you can really score a lot of points and increase your rating. So enough about the theory, let's go about the position. So this is position number 1. 2 questions, right? Is the question the king safety is an issue, or is the queen the weakest point, the weakest link, right? So the queen here, right? With the knight, if you move the knight, right, you're gonna attack the queen. So that's a feature. Now let's look at the king. Is the king safe here? Well, this line is open, right? And the H file is also open. So the king is weak, right? So now I'm gonna ask you, which move would you play here in this position? Why to play? This was taken by a computer game between Stockfish and Nemo Reno. They do play these computer engine tournaments, and this is the position why to play. Feel free to pause the video if you need more time. And now let's go for the answer. Even though the queen can be targeted, there's no good discovery. If you move the knight, the queen can retreat over here and you don't win on the spot because this is protected and the queen has a safety square on d8. So that's not the right idea. But getting to the king is the right idea, and rook take h7 is the move, crashing through. King has to take, check, king moves back, rook h1. So you gave up an entire rook, but the queen is trying to invade, right? Bishop h4 played, of course you take, and now black resign. Let me explain why. The king goes to f8, trying to escape. Queen h7 here, very strong. You're cutting off the king. Now bishop f7 played, and here the king is trying to escape over here, find a safety. So can you prevent that? Yes, you can. It's called a quiet move. Bishop g5 played, and that's the end of the game. So let's say that if black plays b4, then you do check. The king cannot go to e7, king move, and queen h8, checkmate. And over here, you would have rook e7 as a defense, but you do bishop g4, and you're cutting off here and here. And after this, you win the game like that. Queen f6, and you're completely dominating here. So white is winning. That was example number 1. Let's move to the next example. My last example is the most advanced, but also the most amazing one. So thank you for sticking around, and I'll give you the hint to solve the position. Are you looking at the opponent's queen? Can you make something out of it? Or are you gonna go for the king's safety and win the game tactically? That's a dilemma. So onto the position. White was played by STOCKFISH14, the king of all engines, and black was played by FatFritz2. So this is a position played from the engine tournaments that they have on in order to get the rating for the chess engines. So why to play? I will tell you that I was not able to solve this position because this was fairly complicated. So give it some time, pause the video, and I'm gonna go over the solution pretty quickly. So before I unveil the winning move, you have to ask yourself, is it the queen or is it about the king? So let's look at the king first. The king here, yes, there's a pawn here, and that could be dangerous, but I don't see how the other pieces can get there. So let's say if I try to sack, then you would take, let's say, if I take here, simply knight takes back. And yes, I open the lines, but it would take more time to get there, and black will organize. So it's not about the king. At least I cannot work it out. Is it about the queen? Well, the queen over here doesn't have any square. Cannot go here. It's all taken. Cannot go there. All these green squares are protected by white. So the queen is in trouble. So how to take advantage of that is the next question, right? Now, if you were to just attack the queen, which makes sense, the queen retreats. And if you attack again, then the queen retreats and you haven't trapped the queen. It's about trapping the queen. So what is the winning move here? The answer is rook e1. That's a pretty deep concept, right? Not see quite yet how to get to the queen. So let's just play the waiting move, king h8. And now STOCKFISH14 would play rook e2. And I think that the pattern emerged. So if I play another waiting move, then bishop e1, and I'm targeting the rook, the queen, I'm sorry, by the rook on e2. So pretty amazing stuff, right? Rook e1, you move, rook e2, you move, and bishop e1. It's important in e1 because you're protecting c3, right? If you move back, let's say here, then the queen has an escape over here. So that wouldn't work. So bishop e1 and rook e2 win the queen. So in the game, knight e4 played, right? Trying to have some counterplay. And here, another brilliant move, rook takes. So black has to take, and here, bishop c4 is the winning move. So now the bishop protects the key squares, no escape for the queen, and rook a2 winning the queen this way, win the game. So there was e3 played, rook a2, and played here. So I just want to show you that in one variation, to win the queen, you would basically have the rook from e2 coming this way on the horizontal line, and in the game, you have rook a2 winning the queen this way, and there is no escape anywhere for the poor queen. So now you may say here, that's two rooks for the queen, but because of this pawn, and this, you have a winning position. So the game continued, but here you can see a7 pushing this one, and you're completely winning. And at some point, the king came to h6, g5 was played, the king took, and here you promote, and after rook take here, and here the queen moved, and you have queen versus rook, and this is winning. So we conclude the tactical series and the lesson number 3. I hope you enjoyed this long video, and I'll see you in the next segment. Thank you very much.